William Morrow and Harper Audio present The Showman. Inside the invasion that shook the world and made a leader of Volodymyr Zelensky, by Simon Shuster, read by Daniel Gamburg. A note before we begin. Don't forget to download the accompanying enhancement PDF from your audiobook provider. It contains maps and source information. To Nina and Marie. Prologue. On the night we first met, backstage at his comedy show in the spring of 2019, Volodymyr Zelensky looked more scared than I would see him for a while. It wasn't only stage fright, which often made him jittery before a performance. He looked half-mute with fear that night. His lip clenched in his teeth, his eyes fixed on the floor as he paced around in his tuxedo, oblivious to the noise and the people around him. His bid to become the President of Ukraine was about 3 months old at the time, and the premiere of his new variety show was set to begin in less than an hour. Zelensky would play the lead role, the ringmaster in his peculiar brand of vaudeville, and millions of people would watch the broadcast on television, his medium of choice. For the live event inside the Palace of Ukraine, the biggest concert hall in Kyiv, the good seats sold for more than the average Ukrainian earns in a month, and the entrance was mobbed when I arrived. It wasn't only Kyiv's high society waiting at the metal detectors to get inside. There were plenty of retirees, hipsters, and office workers, young couples on expensive dates, the full range of the middle class that had formed in Ukraine since the collapse of the Soviet Union. They were all Zelensky's fans. Soon they would become his voters. At the front of the crowd, one of his media advisors, Olha Rudenka, who would ride Zelensky's coattails into Parliament that summer, pulled me through the door and showed me the way to get backstage, where the performers were already in costume. A few looked familiar from their movies, though it was hard to recognize anyone among the mass of producers and backup dancers. The actors jostling near the entrance to the stage, the makeup artists and the lighting techs, the choir of girls with crimped hair and white dresses. The older members of the troupe knew not to bother the star before showtime. "Give him a minute," Rudanka said when she saw me sidling up to Zelensky. "I'll introduce you when it's over." He had a lot on his mind, much more than the night's performance. Earlier that day, someone had called in a bomb threat at the theater. The anonymous voice on the line said the building was rigged with explosives that would detonate in the middle of the show. It sounded like a hoax, and Zelensky told his troupe not to panic. Most likely, he figured, it was an overzealous supporter of one of the other candidates in the presidential race trying to sabotage his big premiere. Even so, the law required the theater to take precautions, and a few police officers had come with a canine unit to sniff around the coat check and concession stands. They found nothing suspicious, but the cops still advised the theater to call off the show. That afternoon, Zelensky conferred with the venue's management, and they decided to carry on. They didn't even inform the concert-goers of the danger. More than 3,000 of them were in the hall by the time I got backstage, enough to start a stampede if Zelensky told them of the bomb threat. So he pretended everything was fine and allowed his audience to enjoy the act in ignorance. Even the performers were not all aware of the danger. Backstage during the show, they sat around on costume trunks between their sketches, eating takeout and raising toasts. A handful of them had been performing with Zelensky for decades, and this would be his last big show before the elections pulled him through the looking glass from satire into pop.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?